Hey y'alls, my Andis here from Audio Only. Shalom bitches, I believe that I was told to say actually. First full week of Billy Bob Space Trucker. It has been one hell of a week, but I believe everything has worked out fairly well, and I'm having fun. Alright, so we are on part 3. So, let us begin. Diplomat Emily, please respond. Still locked in the bathroom, the diplomat tapped on her belt, quickly sealing the room in a soundproof barrier. This is Diplomat Emily. What do you need, Overwatch? Have you escaped from the station? Affirmative. I have taken up refuge with another Deathworlder. He hauls cargo and seems to have high endurance and low curiosity. He's perfect for this mission. Is there a chance he's working for the galactic government? None. His species is strange and brand new. From what he's told me, I think they're on the watch list of potential military threats. They have some very interesting tactics. Excellent. We must make diplomatic contact with them and see if we can exploit their status. What are they called? They refer to themselves as humans. If possible, seek out the American clan specifically. If he is any indication of their behavior, they're just what we need. Do you need us to replenish your accounts? No, I've offered him 10 billion credits upon arrival at the capital, and that is more than enough to buy his loyalty, it seems. They seem to find contracts as soul-binding. Very interesting. We'll look into this Deathworlder with more care while you travel. Who is he? The diplomat glanced towards where she knew Billy Bob was sitting in his cabin. Perhaps the savior or destroyer of the known galaxy if everything went according to her plan. His name is Billy Bob Space Trucker. In the cabin, Billy Bob had the sound system turned up as he hummed and tapped to the controls with the song. Give me a job, give me security. Of course, he was singing along, but couldn't hold a tune to save his life. Emily soon opened up the bathroom and returned to the main cabin, but with the music as loud as it was, he had no idea she was behind him. Gotta be a blue-collar man! He was shouting more than singing at the end while playing an invisible set of drums as hard as he possibly could. When it was over, he heard the cough from behind him and nearly jumped out of his seat. Jesus! Don't sneak up on a guy like that! He quickly turned the music off as Emily took a seat in the co-pilot chair once more. Is that some sort of caste war song? She asked as she looked over at him. What? No, sort of. Look, we don't have castes. We choose our own jobs, and people can move from one job sector to another. It's just an awesome song. It's part of my, group, industry. I don't know the right term for it. So, what is blue collar? Means you work a job with high physical demand, mostly. Long hours, shitty conditions, stuff like that. But don't let that fool you. Plenty of us are intelligent and cultured just fine. We just like having our life be a bit simpler. I come from California, for example, which is mostly known for hippies and yuppies, and artsy-fartsy types. But most of the state is common folk like me. Work hard, drink beer, that sort of thing. I never really bought into the other image of my home. Aside from becoming the captain of the dance team at school, I fronted over all of the style of those guppy shits. Step on my turf, you better bring it, or else I'm gonna serve you so hard you might as well have gotten F'd in the A. Emily was quiet as she stared at him. You completely lost me halfway through. He waved a hand at that. Never mind, not important. So, what's up with that ass-face guy? The who? Those space crabs who were trying to kill you when we met. He waved a hand, since he couldn't be bothered to check his translator for the actual names now that he had custom input set. Oh, the ass-faces. They are from my home system. They evolved on a nearby planet. My people and theirs have been enemies since our early spacefaring age. But since we both evolved on our own death worlds, our struggles have been in other systems, since our homes are useless to each other. Wait, you're a death worlder? They are too? They kinda died pretty easy for Death Worlders.
You have to remember, Billy Bob, that we evolved on standard gravity worlds, not your high gravity one. They are perfectly adapted for their planet, I assure you, as I am for mine. With that, she reached up, finally pulling back the hood, revealing some sort of fabric that had covered her face, which Billy Bob had mistook for shadows. He gasped as she revealed a sleek-looking head covered in soft white down, with a pointed muzzle that had a few sharp teeth exposed, and one eye on each side of a painted face. She looked like a bald eagle, and he had seen her fly. A space eagle! That's awesome! He quickly got up from his chair, rushing back to the fridge in the cabin, and returning with a can of beer, and handed it to her, while she looked confused.
Here, say, I'm an embodiment of freedom and liberty, and I love America.
Emily looked at the metal can being held in one of her hands, and back up at Billy Bob. I'm an embodiment of freedom and liberty, and I love America.
Fuck yeah!
He gave her 2 thumbs up while grinning like a maniac. What's in the can?
Beer!
You said that before, but it doesn't translate.
It's carbonated alcohol.
He was going to go on when she popped the tap, and then bit the side off of the can in order to suck the beer out with surprising speed. He stood there, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, before she finished the beer and slammed the empty can against her forehead to crush it.
Fuck yeah!
Mittens jumped behind him at this sudden yell, but Billy Bob wasn't paying attention to his cat at the moment.
You are awesome, lady. You are the best fucking diplomat I've ever met in my life. How did you know to do it like that?
My people consume alcohol like that in a ritualistic fashion. It is to show trust that you aren't giving us a lethal dose of alcohol. I like the carbonation, though. That's new. What's it for?
Helps you get drunk faster.
He smiled and lifted a hand, open-palmed in the air in front of him. Nothing happened. Then he pointed to his open palm.
Hit my palm with your palm.
There was a pause before Emily reached up with one of her hands and tapped it against his.
Harder.
She repeated the motion with more force this time.
That's a high five. We do it to show excitement and joy.
Interesting. Why?
I don't know.
He was too excited to be anything other than loud and enthusiastic at this point. When she pointed behind him at Mittens, he picked up his startled cat before she could say anything.
This is Mittens. That's his name. He's a cat, specifically a Martian marauder. Cats are animals of varying sizes on my home planet. They're fuzzy, and if you pet them, they purr. They show affection by harming you a little. They eat meat.
He gave the creature a firm belly rub as it squirmed and then tossed it back into his bed. The cat looked like it had been gravely disgraced and began to clean its fur. Why are you so excited?
Because you're awesome. All those damn Xenos with their shitty names and shitty customs and shitty attitudes about shit. But you look like a bald eagle, you shotgun beer like a pro, and you have a goddamn name.
Emily looked slightly to moderately confused, but slowly nodded as he seemed far too excited over this.
Well, sorry if I'm a little too eager and loud, lady. Just never met such an awesome Xeno before.
Still grinning like an idiot, he got back into his seat to check they hadn't drifted off course or anything life-threatening. Well, I guess we're off to a good start on our friendship, Billy Bob.
Fuck yeah, we are.
So, how long do you drive in between breaks? We've been moving for about 3 hours. Do you require time to rest or sleep?
Not just yet. After eating, I go about 6 hours before eating again. Roughly. Then I'll sleep about 3 hours after that. Roughly. How about your species?
Well, I should take a nap soon then, and wake up when you're ready to eat. Do you have other bedding? She looked back at the single bunk further back in the cabin, where Mittens was performing some yoga as he licked himself. Can I move him?
Yeah, just boot the fuzzbutt to the ground.
Emily moved back towards the bunk, and Mittens looked up at her. She looked back. Then they engaged in a staring contest. Unblinking space eagle against unblinking cat. The tense confrontation behind him was lost on Billy Bob,
as he brought out some headphones so he could listen to music while she took a nap.
Working man time.
The staring contest behind him finally ended as Mittens broke first and Emily tossed him off the bed in victory. The cat huffed and quickly climbed into Billy Bob's lap for consolation petting, while the trucker bobbed his head to the tune and kept their ship from drifting into any other ships traveling through the FTL lane. It hardly seemed like 3 hours when Billy Bob felt something tap his shoulder, and he jumped up, sending Mittens flying through the lower gravity cabin and up onto the dash.
Oh, right.
He pulled off his headphones as Emily stared at him.
Sleep well?
I'm a little surprised. You drove for 3 hours more without any real company.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. I once had to drive a double about 30 asses out of my way to avoid some local smokies and make it to my 99 on time. No sweat.
He paused as he saw Emily's blank stare.
I drive all day to make a detour around some space cops.
See, how is that not easier to say than what you said before?
It's a space trucker thing. Want to get something to eat?
The Space Eagle shrugged, and he turned back to his controls, picking the annoyed Mittens up and sending him on his lap so he could start spinning down the engines and pull out of the space lane to get to a refueling station.
Hey, how common are spacefaring Death Worlders anyway? I was thinking about it while you were sleeping.
We are fairly uncommon, but not unique, and most are highly adapted to one specific climate. Your species seems to be fairly resilient and adaptable, however.
Yeah, that's humans for you.
He pulled his longhorn out of the FTL and brought it to dock among the multitude of larger Xenoships. He looked lost among the Atlas-class cargo trawlers, and more specific local variants, but he really didn't care. Emily pulled her hood back up and followed him out into the station. Just like the other, he followed the flow of the crowd to the center, towards the restaurant and entertainment venues. Unlike last time, it seemed like far more of the crowd were eating whatever meal their internal clocks told them it was supposed to be. But he had no problem shouldering crowds aside to find some place that looked like it had food he could eat. The issue came when he pushed back a group of green space geckos with bug eyes. Space gecko flies? Space fleckos.
Hey, you ugly native creatures, illegitimate son! Watch where you're going! You're dealing with a squad of space flecko rangers, you know!
He sure was glad he was so quick with his translator function in his implant. Otherwise, he might have had to learn some of these Xenos' names.
Listen, Sparky, I was just walking through to find a place to eat.
He turned to walk away, but the creature snapped its fingers, and 10 of the fleckos spread out. Then some sort of awful synth Xeno music began to play as Billy Bob groaned. A floating orb began to change colors above them, and they started to perform what he supposed was a dance. It was one of those races, apparently. They performed their dance as the Xenos around him spread out to give them space. He could hear the oohs and ahs as they showed off their physical prowess. But he was tired of it. He grabbed the floaty orb as they looked confused. Then he turned it over to find the input port. Pulling out a Galactic Standard USB, he plugged it in and selected a song in his implants.
Blame it all on my roots, I showed up in boots.
He began to line dance to I've Got Friends in Low Places, as the Xenos around him were shocked. A single creature dancing back to a squad of Flecko Rangers? He had no idea what Fleckos were, but everyone was shocked. His poise, his grace, his hands tucked into his belt. It was like he didn't need them for balance. Sheer madness. By the end of the song, the crowd was silent. He pulled his USB out of the floating orb and hurled it to the ground, smashing it before firmly holding his raised middle finger in front of the Flecko reader.
In case your translator is having trouble with my body language, this is how my species says, don't fuck with me.
Turning, he began to walk away as the crowd parted before him.
Come on, Emily, let's eat.
He found a decently busy but still open restaurant and picked one of those Xeno chairs that weren't too far off before snapping it in half and stacking the halves so he could sit on it like a regular chair. The staff looked over at him, but none said anything. Once the server came over, he had already thought over what he wanted.
I want a hamburger and some fries.
The server today looked like the same sort of six-armed space frog he dealt with last time. Maybe they were the Mexicans of this sector, or something like that.
What with what?
I want meat, grilled, on top of some bread, with potatoes that have been fried in oil. On the side, add in some space pickles and space onions, and we're set. Oh, right, space meat on space bread and fried space potatoes. Make that up for me.
The creature looked hesitant, but Emily seemed amused.
I'll have that too.
She slid a small black box across the table, and the creature quickly retreated to the kitchen.
You don't mind eating meat in front of herbivores?
Fuck no. Not my fault I need some damn protein.
She made a chittering noise that sounded like a bird call, which his translator informed him was laughter. He smiled back at his new friend. It took about 15 minutes before the space frog returned with 2 plates. What he brought out was a mess, and it looked like they'd combined 2 different meats. One burnt, the other bloody, and slapped it on some purple and green-looking space rye bread. There were sliced orange something. Space carrots? Well, they were orange, but looked like orange space onions. The fried lumps looked like blue space potatoes with white stripes, which was fine. No sign of pickles.
Good enough.
He grunted, and the server quickly retreated once more. The other customers began to move away, obviously sickened by the sight and smell of meat, but they didn't mind. He was about to try his food when he saw the space fleckos walking in, another floating ball above their heads.
Ah, fuck, guys. I'm trying to eat here. I'll serve you again once I'm done.
Then they brandished knives and bats.
Ah, shit. Got angry I fronted all over your style, huh?
You have insulted some dumb flecko in the art of space dance. I will not tolerate your barbaric dance. You will pay.
They advanced as he looked at Emily.
Is self-defense allowed here?
Of course. He nodded at that and stood up, walking towards the advancing fleckos. The patrons were fleeing at this point, while he stood in front of them.
Not a fan of Garth Brooks?
The leader screamed and charged, slamming the bat into his stomach. Billy Bob grunted softly and then ripped the bat from the creature's hands. It was about the size of a Little League bat. He turned it over in his hands, testing the weight, as the fleckos suddenly looked nervous. Then he grabbed the floating ball, plugged his USB, and chose another song.
Everywhere I hear the sound of marching, charging feet, boy.
He swung the bat into the flecko's head as teeth and xenoblood came flying out, and then the creature went flying. While the Rolling Stones played, he kicked another flecko in the chest and waded into the group of them. They were no match for a high-gravity Death Worlder. They were nimble and spry, but that didn't do any good against an angry space trucker with a bat. Even if it was Little League size, he could twist away from their knives and clock 'em with a fist or the bat if he felt like it on his way by. They tried to stumble past and regroup to attack him all at once, but that just meant it was easier for him to catch 2 or 3 of them with a single swing of the bat. Billy Bob had been in plenty of fights growing up, and even more since he became a space trucker. He had no problems using his mass to his advantage, as at times he simply shoved a flecko to the ground before jabbing it in the face with the end of the bat, or even picking one up and slamming his face into the fleckos. It was a tactic that worked very well for him. Finally the song was ending, and he mopped up. Just one flecko still conscious, as he picked it up and threw it out the front of the window. Or so he thought. Instead, what he thought was a window shimmered, and it flew straight through.
What the fuck? There isn't glass in that window?
No, just a holographic display, Emily told him. So he cursed, and picked up a bottle from the table that hadn't been destroyed. The flecko was surprised, but started to get up, until he threw the bottle out that same window and onto the thing's head. The glass shattered, and he grinned, before sitting down, as sirens sounded throughout the station. He sat down at his food with a smile.
Nice way to work up an appetite. Just explained to the cops I was defending myself. Simple little brawl. Nothing big.
Emily stared at him from her shadowed hood and said, "Those were local soldiers. The cops are probably bringing reinforcements." When I said self-defense was allowed, I didn't mean in the sense they'll let you almost kill a squad of special forces.
Billy Bob quickly grabbed the food and began to run out the door.
Get your meal. We're having takeout tonight.
The diplomat sighed and grabbed her food as well, rushing to catch with the fleeing space trucker as they escaped yet another refueling station. And so ends another chapter in the life of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.